Imagine, if you will, a world utterly different from our own. It is a time long before the first cities were built, before the invention of the wheel, even before the flicker of a controlled fire. We are traveling back in time, not just thousands but millions of years. The year is not 2025, but a staggering 4.8 million years in the past. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and strange, unfamiliar blossoms. The sounds are not of traffic and technology, the wind rustling through ancient trees, the calls of bizarre birds, and the distant growl of creatures long since vanished from our planet. This is the Pliocene epoch, a truly primordial time. This ancient Earth was a tapestry of sprawling savannas, dense woodlands, vast, winding rivers. The continents were slowly drifting, still settling into the positions we know today. The climate was generally warmer and wetter, creating lush environments teeming with life. In this world, our own story was just beginning. Small groups of beings, not quite ape and not yet human, were taking their first tentative steps. They were a new kind of primate, one that was beginning to walk upright on two legs. This simple yet revolutionary change would set them on a path that would eventually lead to us. It was a change that opened up a new world of possibilities and challenges. Life in this distant past was an unfiltered, moment-to-moment struggle for survival. There were no calendars to mark the days, no clocks to tell the time, and the ever-present pangs of hunger. Every single day was dominated by one fundamental need: the search for food. By exploring their daily hunt for food, we are not just looking at a forgotten chapter of natural history. We are, in a very real sense, looking at the very dawn of ourselves. Who were these pioneering beings? Our distant relatives, living nearly 5 million years ago. They were creatures known to scientists as hominins, a group that includes modern humans and all our extinct ancestors after we split from the chimpanzee lineage. At this time, the hominin on stage was likely Ardipithecus ramidus, not the hulking cavemen of popular imagination, rather small and slender. An adult just under 4 feet tall, the height of a young child today. Faces more ape-like than human, projecting jaw, smaller brain case. They lived in lush, wooded environments in what is now Ethiopia, not an open savanna, forests, grasslands. Habitat offered resources and refuge. Trees provided a safe place to sleep at night. Away from predators prowling the ground, their bodies mixed ancient and new traits. Long arms, grasping feet with a divergent big toe, comfortable climbing in the trees, much like ape ancestors. But something remarkable was happening: the shape of the pelvis, the position of the opening at the base of the skull. These tell a revolutionary story. They could walk upright on 2 legs on the ground. Bipedalism, not as efficient as ours, but monumental. It freed their hands no longer just for climbing or for walking on. Hands now available to carry food, carry infants, and perhaps carry the very first simple tools. A critical step on the long road to becoming human. Brains still quite small, about the size of a modern chimpanzee's brain. Thinking more instinctual than ours, not capable of complex planning. Their world was immediate sensory experience, the smell of ripe fruit. Life lived in the present. As the first light of dawn filtered through the canopy, our ancient ancestors would begin to stir. The night, spent high in the relative safety of the trees, was over. With the rising sun came the familiar and pressing need, the search for food. Hunger was a constant companion, a driving force that propelled them out of their leafy nests and onto the forest floor. Their day wasn't structured by appointments or schedules, but by the simple, urgent quest to find enough calories to survive until the next sunrise. This daily journey for sustenance was the central drama of their lives. Their search for food was a two-pronged strategy, born of necessity and opportunity. The most reliable part of their diet came from gathering. This involved methodically searching their territory for edible plants. Fruits, nuts, tubers, shoots, leaves. Their knowledge of the environment would have been intimate, passed down through observation from one generation to the next. This plant-based diet formed the secure foundation of their daily nutrition, the bedrock of their survival. The other part of their strategy was likely more opportunistic, finding animal protein. It is highly improbable they were skilled cooperative hunters of large game. Instead, they were likely scavengers. They would have followed the sounds of predator kills, perhaps the calls of vultures circling overhead, hoping to find the remains of a carcass left behind by a more powerful carnivore like a saber-toothed cat. This was dangerous but rewarding, offering a rich source of calories and fat that was hard to come by otherwise. The primary and most dependable source of food for our Ardipithecus ancestors was the vast green pantry of their woodland home. Gathering plants was not a matter of chance but a skill honed by generations of trial and error. Their world was filled with potential food, but also potential poison. Young hominins would have learned by watching their elders, observing which leaves were plucked, which berries were eaten, and which were ignored. This was education in its most fundamental form, a direct transmission of life-saving knowledge. They would have developed a mental map of their territory, remembering the location of a particularly fruitful fig tree or a patch of edible roots. Their diet would have been incredibly varied, changing with the seasons. In the wet season, lush new shoots and a wide variety of soft fruits would be plentiful. They might have feasted on wild figs, berries, and other sweet, energy-rich foods that were easy to find and consume. Their hands, now freed from walking, were perfect for the delicate work of plucking berries from a thorny bush or carefully selecting tender young leaves. They could use their fingers to probe and dig, to peel tough skins, and to carry a surplus of food for a short distance, perhaps back to a safe spot to share with an infant. As the dry season approached, the landscape would change, the soft fruits would wither, and the tender leaves would become tough. Now, their knowledge would be truly tested. They would have to rely on different resources, such as hard-shelled nuts that required effort to open, or underground storage organs like tubers and roots. These fallback foods were crucial for survival when preferred items were scarce. While plants formed the foundation of their diet, our early ancestors were not exclusively vegetarian. They were omnivores. The lure of meat was powerful. Meat offered dense fat and protein. 4.8 million years ago, they were not at the top of the food chain, not mighty hunters able to bring down large prey. Instead, they practiced a riskier, opportunistic trade, scavenging. They found and consumed leftovers of kills made by formidable predators, saber-toothed cats, giant hyenas. Imagine the scene. Groups drawn by squabbling vultures approach a clearing. A partial antelope carcass lies in the center, the air thick with the smell of blood, immense opportunity, and extreme danger. The original killer might still be nearby, guarding its meal. Packs of hyenas and other scavengers arrive, creating fierce competition. They had to be quick, nimble, and incredibly wary, ready to flee at the slightest sign of danger. The goal: get in, grab what you can, get out fast. They couldn't compete for main muscle masses. They targeted scraps left behind. Using a sharp-edged rock, they sliced strips of meat clinging to bone. More importantly, they targeted marrow, rich, nutritious, and inaccessible to many animals. With a heavy stone, they smashed open a femur or a humerus. They accessed a high-energy food source. Scavenging was fraught with peril but crucial in our evolution. It added calorie-dense food to the diet. Over time, meat and marrow access may have fueled a larger brain. The cunning, risk assessment, and tool use required for scavenging pushed cognitive complexity. In a world without claws, sharp fangs overwhelming strength, our ancestors had to rely on their wits. The key to their expanding diet, especially their access to meat and marrow, was the advent of the first tools. Don't picture finely crafted axes or spear points. Tools 4.8 million years ago were incredibly simple, indistinguishable from ordinary rocks, branches, found and used for a purpose. Using an external object to achieve a goal was a profound cognitive leap, a spark of ingenuity that would ignite later technologies. Early stone tools were unmodified rocks chosen for size, weight, or natural sharpness. A heavy, rounded cobble could be a hammerstone perfect for cracking tough nuts. The same stone could smash leg bones to reach calorie-rich marrow. A naturally fractured stone like flint could be a rudimentary knife. It could slice meat, cut through tough plant stems. Alongside stone, hominins used organic tools of wood, bone. A sturdy stick could dig, unearthing tubers, roots. A pointed stick could probe for insects or serve as a rudimentary defensive spike. Organic tools rarely survive. Wood rots, bone disintegrates, leaving mostly stone artifacts in the record. Tool use created a feedback loop. Tools opened higher quality foods. Better diet gave more energy, supporting gradual brain growth. A larger brain enabled better tool selection and eventual intentional modification. Life for our early ancestors was lived under a constant shadow of danger. Survival was a daily victory, never a guarantee. The Pliocene world was filled with formidable predators. Giant hyenas with bone-crushing jaws, saber-toothed cats, Dinofelis stalking. These carnivores were ever-present threats. Our hominin ancestors were on the menu. Dangers weren't limited to predators. Sudden flash floods through river valleys. No shelter from torrential rain. Lightning storms splitting the sky. Startled herds of ancient elephants, territorial hippopotamus by water, venomous snakes in the undergrowth, mosquitoes and biting insects spreading disease. Competition for resources was relentless. They had to share fruit, nuts and leaves with many animals, troops of baboons, herds of antelopes, flocks of birds, rodents foraging in the brush, scavenging brought fierce competition, packs of hyenas fighting over carcasses, flocks of powerful vultures circling, often left with only the final scraps. These threats shaped behavior and evolution, perpetual vigilance, constant anxious glances, keen senses, quick reflexes, living in social groups, a life of perpetual caution, the cost of survival. Did our ancient ancestors face this dangerous world alone, or did they rely on each other? The evidence suggests that, like most primates, Ardipithecus lived in social groups. A solitary hominin would have been incredibly vulnerable, an easy target for the many predators that shared their world. Living together offered the simple but profound advantage of safety in numbers. More individuals meant more eyes and ears to watch for danger, more voices to raise an alarm, and a more intimidating presence to potentially deter a would-be attacker. Within these small groups, there would have been a web of social interactions. We can infer from modern primates that their lives would have been filled with grooming, squabbling, forming alliances. It is within this group context that the young would have learned the essential skills for survival. An infant would have clung to its mother, observing her every move, learning which plants to eat, how to find water, how to react to the sound of a predator. Cooperation would have been essential, even in its simplest forms. A group of hominins would have been more effective at defending a scavenged carcass from smaller competitors than a single individual. They may have shared information using simple calls, gestures, to signal the location of a fruiting tree or the presence of danger. The very act of sharing food would have been a powerful social glue, reinforcing bonds and creating a system of mutual support within the group.